Today on Dear Young Men, we're going to be talking about why you should make things to leave a legacy. We're going to talk about learning to sacrifice. And finally, we're going to talk about how to become the man your kids think you are or becoming the man that your kids need you to be. This is episode 2 of Dear Young Men. Over the past 3 years, inflation has reached almost 20%, and on this show, it is my job to teach you about fatherhood, finances, and more. So I want to help you with that. So I have come up with 5 tips to save money in this economy. Keeping in mind, I may or may not have implemented several of these techniques as well. Number 1, find a restaurant that does the order ahead option. Walk in with your shoulders back, your head held high, and then steal a bag of someone else's food. This is a risky option though, not because you're going to get caught, because you don't know if the food that you're going to be stealing is going to taste like complete crap and have something gross like vegetables or even fruits. So do this sparingly, or do this so often that you can afford to throw away a few of the less tasty meals. Number 2, have rich parents. There's nothing like driving down the road with the windows rolled down in your dad's 2024 Mercedes C-Class. The freedom of knowing that you are just only one ski accident away from inheriting millions of dollars of wealth only to gamble away on fixed NBA games, and thus having to resort to going to a local Panera and swiping bags of food. Number 3, buy a mattress from one of those online retailers with a 365-day return policy and return it on day 364. While this may feel scummy, they should know that you have to eat some stranger's soup, salad, and bread somewhere. Number 4 consists of a radical new development online marketing called selling a course about nonsense or selling a course about hopes and dreams. And you want to sell this to people who will blindly trust that this $2,997 course that they're going to buy will not only improve their life, but make them also as wealthy as you are made by that course. Just make sure to throw in a bunch of buzzwords like hustler, mindset, grind, work ethic, cash flow, and more. And finally, the 5th one is play the lottery. I have seen the dollar amounts eclipse hundreds of millions of dollars. And while the chances of you winning the lottery is slim, the chances are 0 if you never buy a ticket. So keep all these in mind over the next several months. And please, to the guy that stole my Jersey Mike sub the other day, please sign up for my course. I'm Scott Schroeder, and this is episode 2 of the Dear Young Men podcast. This is the best part of this whole show, I swear. This is the thing I had the most fun doing. So today we're going to talk about 3 subjects and a few more. The first one is why you should make things to leave a legacy. On this podcast, obviously, one of the big pillars of this podcast is creating. Not just creating a video or social media content creation, but creating real things that can actually last a meaningful amount of time that you could pass to your kids or that your kids will want to enjoy when you've passed away or when you are old and you can't enjoy it anymore. So the way that I go about doing this is I do a few different things. The first one, obviously, the bulk of it is the videos that I make. I make a ton of videos on this channel now, this podcast, that hopefully they can listen to down the road sometime. I think that'd be kind of cool. I don't have any sons yet, but I know I'm going to get some. I did have a dream one time where I was going to have 4 girls, but that's not true. I know it's not going to happen. Anyways, so I think that for me, a lot of it is the videos that I make. That's the thing I spend the most time making, the thing I spend the most time doing. But I also make a lot of other physical things. So for the videos, I will obviously post these videos, the Dear Young Men podcast and my main YouTube channel, Scott Schroeder. That channel is dedicated solely towards my kids. I like making the videos. I do the fun challenges, but I want to show my kids what life was like for me at 28, 29, 30, when I'm a young parent, a young man, basically. So that's the idea. I want them to be able to go to that channel if they are in times of trouble or I'm going to get copyright sued by the Beatles. But I want them to be able to go to that channel and watch sort of how I experience things. Because when they come back to reach out to me for advice, that's going to be 25 years later. They're going to be 27. I'm going to be in my 50s. And I'm not going to know exactly what it's like in that moment. I'm going to know what it's like to be 50s. So I think it's really cool to be able to have them peer back in time, to open the shade and to go back in time and actually walk hand in hand with me as their equal, not as their parent, but as their dad that's like also their age, which is really unique because your parents are always a lot older than you. That's just how it works. They can't be the same age. So I think that's the bulk of my work. I also make a lot of videos for my family on the side. That's just for my family. They won't ever get posted to YouTube. They're very personal. They're very emotional experiences, whether it's my youngest daughter was recently born back in October, and I made a video about that whole experience. She was 5 weeks early, so that was really stressful, but it was just an amazing video that I can't show the world, but I can show my wife and my kids, and they can watch that as they get older and they go through their pregnancies, and they get to sort of see how we went through ours. It's tracking the whole pregnancy, all that type of stuff. I think it's really cool because it's made about them. So not only can they look at this video and think, oh wow, dad really loves me and mom really loves me, like look at this video that he made, I could see that they love me so much, but also like I'm feeling these same emotions that they're feeling and that they felt about me. And that's really cool. I think that's really cool for them to be able to feel how I felt. So videos for me is a big thing. Next, I make a lot of stuff with my hands. I wish I made more stuff with my hands, but I do make a lot of things with my hands. The biggest thing is going to be home projects. So for me, I've talked about this in the past, but in the last episode, I made this slat wall behind me. If you're not watching the podcast, it's just a slat wall that, just a basic slat wall, whatever. And those types of things, while they aren't functionally that important, like this slat wall doesn't really mean that much. If we're still in this house in 25, 30 years and my kids come downstairs and they see this slat wall that I built years and years and years ago, or if I replace it with something else, whatever it may be, they can show their spouse and they can almost feel my presence in that thing because I built that with my hands. I crafted it with my hands. The rest of this office, I have created myself with my hands. I put up all the drywall. I did all the paint. I did everything. And I think that those things are really cool. I wish I made more stuff, little trinkets and little things. I've made my wife necklaces, and I would like to, as my kids get older, I like to make them a dollhouse. I like to make them a really cool bed. And I think that you want to consider making these things and taking the time to make these things because it's leaving a legacy beyond just like my kids are my legacy. That's like my biggest legacy. But also it's like I was more than just my kids, and I'm more than just my kids. And I love my kids and I would do anything for my kids, but I'm also, I consider myself an artist. I'm a filmmaker. I'm more than just one thing. I'm multiple facets of a person. And I think that to be able to show your kids that and to be able to show their kids that, like I wish I knew more about my grandparents, my great-grandparents. Like I wish I knew more about who they were because they're really remarkable people. I mean, they were really interesting, remarkable people, but I don't really know that much about them. The only thing I know about them is like things that I've kind of casually heard through the grapevine, but I don't really know anything about them. And I want to be able to leave a legacy that's much more than like what people say about me. I want to leave my notebooks to them, and I want to leave all this stuff to them when I'm gone. So that way they can learn who the type of person that I was and that I am now. So that's what I think you should be doing. I think you need to learn to leave a legacy for your kids and for your kids' kids and your kids' kids, because that's all like there's a tree and at the top, or there's a pyramid and at the top, it's you and your wife. And below that is your kids. And then below that, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I want to be able to, I want my great grandkids to know me. I think that'd be really cool. They might not ever meet me, but they can know who I was based off of these videos and based off of my journals and based off of everything. Next thing is learning to sacrifice. And this one to me is the absolute hardest thing that I've ever done as a father, as a husband. If you want to be a good one of those, the whole thing is your willingness to sacrifice. The better father you are, the more you're willing to sacrifice. That doesn't mean you have to be sacrificing all the time. That's not what I'm saying. But you do need to be willing to sacrifice. So I have a few quotes here. The quote from Socrates, whom I love. Well, I guess I don't love him, but I really, really like Socrates. The unexamined life is not worth living. And what that means is that we must understand who we are and why we are here. Because if you don't take a look at your life and who you are and what you like, you're more than just your job. You're more than just your kids. Who are you? When you come home, and you need to be really aggressive when you do this too. Like you need to be able to hurt your own feelings. I, in the past, have been the type of person who would get off work. I would come home. I would pull my phone out. We would get Chipotle or something. We would turn the TV on and we would sit there for 4 or 5 hours, and then we would go to bed. That is not a life worth living. It's not a life worth living, and because it was an unexamined life. So you need to know who you are, why you're here, what's your purpose. To me, my purpose is I want to help people the best I can. I want more people to become dads. I think being a dad is the greatest decision I've ever made. I want to help people with their finances. I want to help people create more. I think people should make more. I mean, obviously you can tell based off what I'm talking about. And I think that I'm best suited to help young men because that's who I was, that's who I currently am, and that's who I think I can help the best right now. And so you have to figure out like what your calling in life is. and it's hard. Like, it's hard to know what that is. I think most people are called to be parents. I think a lot of people turn away from that, but I think most people are called to be parents because there's getting hugged from your child is unlike anything else you've ever experienced in your whole life. No promotion, nothing you make. There's just something about a 2-year-old girl running up to you saying that she loves you and grabbing you around the neck and giving you a hug. There's just nothing like that. I mean, that's what it's all for. And so, but you have to be willing to make the sacrifice to become that person. I have written down here, real love is sacrifice. You cannot love someone without sacrificing yourself to make their life better. In this case, my wife, I want my wife to not have to work. And in order to do that, I have to work a lot more. I could not work a lot more, but my wife is ultimately going to have to work probably her whole life if I choose to not work more. I'm also going to have to sacrifice. A lot of guys have toys. I don't have toys. My lawnmower is a nice lawnmower. It's like a John Deere. It's a nice lawnmower, but it was $600. I bought it used on Facebook Marketplace. I could have bought a $3,500 one from Home Depot, but I bought a $600 one because that extra $3,000 I can invest. And in the future, that will be a reason my wife can no longer have to work. So you have to find your purpose and you have to examine your life and you have to be willing to sacrifice. This goes both ways, though. You don't want to be in a relationship where one of you is bearing the brunt of all the sacrifices and the other one isn't. My wife is just as willing as I am to sacrifice. I just don't want my wife to have to sacrifice as much as I sacrifice. If you've ever read any Greek mythology or if you've watched any Greek mythology, you know about Atlas, and he's the Titan who carries the world. They lose the fight to, I believe the story goes that they lose the fight to Zeus, and Atlas is tasked with holding the planet up. And I've always thought that, to me, that's an allegory for families. That's an allegory for, that's what it is to be a man, is to hold the planet up for your family. That's what you're meant to do, and that takes an immense amount of sacrifice, and it's something that you have to be willing to do, basically, because you're not going to be able to get the nicest car. My wife drives around an exceptionally expensive car, and I drive around like a $3,000 or $4,000 minivan. And we could buy a more expensive a more expensive car, but it's just that money. While it might make my life a little bit better, 5-10% better getting a new car, it's going to harm the long-term future for my family. And I know that the sacrifice right now is worth it. So you have to be willing to sacrifice. Obviously, I'm a Christian, so Jesus, the ultimate sacrifice, he died for our sins. And so that's the ultimate sacrifice. That's like the whole Bible is basically built upon this idea of sacrifice. And finally, another thing I've written down is do not be afraid to question things, not only yourself, but the culture in which you reside in, because Steve Jobs said it best when he said, once you realize the world around you was shaped by people no smarter than you, you realize that you can bend it and shape it to how you desire, how you want it to be. And so if your life right now, if you're an alcoholic, if you are, you're a terrible father, you're an absent father, you're a bad husband, whatever, that's your decision. I mean, those are your choices that you're currently making, which is amazing because that means that you could just choose to be better. And I think that's what I like so much about life is that most of it is just, it's up to you. Just choose to be better. And that's really great. That's all it takes is I just have to choose to be better. And if I just make that decision today to choose to be better, to choose to sacrifice, then my life will get better. If I choose to go to the gym and I choose to eat healthier, in the moment it might stink. But in 3 months, I'm going to have a six-pack. I'm going to be in great shape. My clothes are going to fit me a lot better. My wife's going to think I look better. That's better. I know that it might suck in the moment, but you have to be able to think in decades and not days. That's my favorite saying. I don't know if I came up with that myself or I heard somebody else say it, but you have to be able to think in decades, not days. And if nobody else said that, then I'm coining it. My phrase, Scott Schroeder. That's going to be on, somebody's going to quote that one day. Probably not. But at least I will quote it one day. That's someone being me. And finally, the last thing today I want to talk about is how to become the man your kids think you are, or becoming the man your kids need you to be. And I think this ties in with the sacrifice. This ties into leaving a legacy. But to me, it's like your kids look at you. My daughter looks at me. My two daughters look at me like I'm the greatest thing ever. And it sucks knowing that I'm going to let them down one day because they're going to realize that I'm not the greatest guy ever. But to them, you are that. So try to become that mold. Become the person that you were made to be, and become the person that you can be, that you were made to be. So like a big thing would be if you are, I think having kids is such a great why. I talk about having a why all the time. Like, why are you going to stop drinking alcohol? Like, I don't drink alcohol. I don't do any drugs. I haven't done that for a long time, but a big reason was because I didn't want my kids to see me do it. I didn't have kids at the time, but I didn't want my future kids to see me drinking or to see me doing drugs, whatever it may be. I didn't want them to see me do that because I just thought that was bad. Like, I wouldn't want them to do that, so I'm not going to do it. The do as I say, not as I do. I hate that, and I think that that's a terrible way to parent kids because they know when you're bullshitting them. They know when they're like, well, I'm watching you do this thing that you're telling me not to do, so I'm gonna do it. Like, you told me not to do it, but I'm just gonna do it because you're doing it. So I think that you have to become the man that your kids think that you are, which is impossible because your kids think that you're like the greatest thing ever, and you can look at yourself in the mirror and know that you're not. So I have to manage and tame your addictions, whatever it may be. Obviously, drugs and alcohol is a big one. I know that porn and lust is another large one, a huge one in the culture now, and it's definitely like the biggest. I think for young men specifically, it's probably the biggest problem. I mean, obviously, there's always going to be problems with alcoholism and abusing drugs, but I think that one, managing and taming your addiction to porn and like lust, those are two the big ones. I mean, lust can be a good thing. Like, I lust after my wife. I like my wife. I have two kids, clearly, but it's like you want to be able to tame that. You have to tame that desire to like foment it in a way that's positive. You know, like sex should be the Christian view of sex is that sex becomes the love between two people when they get married becomes so real that it creates human life. And I think that's such a beautiful way to describe my kids, is because that's what I see my kids. It's like the love between my wife and I are so strong that I have two kids to show it. Like, look at these beautiful babies that I was given, that they're like the most amazing things in the whole world. And it's just because my wife and I love each other so much. So obviously lust can be a bad thing, but it can also be a really good thing. Like, you have to just manage that, but you have to manage, obviously, I think porn, like, just stop watching porn. That to me is like the easiest, but hardest, but easiest. I think it's a really hard thing to stop doing, but you just have to dedicate your time and it's every single time. You just make the decision every single day to not do it. And every single time you make the decision to not do it. And if you fall, like, just understand that people mess up and just get back on the wagon. Like, it's okay. Like, there's hope. It's not, you mess up one time, it's not over forever. Like, that's not how life works. You always get a second chance. So continue to take the second chance and just go longer. And eventually you just will stop. You'll stop watching it and your life will be better for it. And then you can come back here and thank me, because we talked about it in the first episode, but there's the self-development market is supposed to grow by $27 billion. And I'm trying to tap into 10% of that. But anyways, seriously, you need to manage that. Next is to be kind and to be a goofball. I am just naturally a goofball. I just am. And I know that life can beat you down. Like, life can beat you down and it sucks. Like, your job, the people you work with, you could just get beaten down into a pulp, and it's the most frustrating thing. But you have to be able to smile. It's like, you have to be able to smile through it. And I know that that's like the hardest thing ever. And sometimes I don't. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm always just in a good mood. But you have to learn to be kind, learn to smile, learn to be a goofball. I think that stuff is just, it's so good for you, because when nothing is that serious. Like, nothing is that serious. We're all going to die at the end of the day. Like, we're all going to the same place. So you might as well have fun and goof off and be a goofball and make other people laugh around you, because it's like, I think it's like the best feeling in the world to even when you're a little down in the dumps, you're having a bad day, to make somebody else laugh. And I think it's worth it. Like, just be a goofball. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Life is not that big of a deal. It's hard. It can beat you down. But at the end of the day, it's like, you might as well laugh. Because it's hard for everybody. So let's just like giggle through it, because if not, it's no fun. It's no fun to not laugh. And finally, the last thing I have is to be firm but fair. I think that I get into trouble sometimes because I'm too much of a goofball where I can't turn on the aggressive nature that I need to turn on and to be able to like be firm and fair. But so like that's something I need to work on, is to be maybe more like a little bit more stern, a little bit more aggressive. But so you have to be able to stand up for yourself and to be willing to stick your neck out and to be willing to take risks. Like I think that's not what it means to be a man, is to take risks. Like I don't think that that's what it means. But that is a huge part of becoming a man. Like as I grew older, I took more and more and more risks. And then you hit a certain point when you start to dial back the risks because what you could lose is worse. But like my wife and I got pregnant relatively young. Like we were 25 or 26, especially compared to all my peers. So that was like a risk. We got married at 20. We got married in 2020. So I was 24. So like we were young. Like we were doing things younger than everybody else was doing them. And like you just got to be able to take a risk. Like just take a risk. You know what I mean? Like just jump, just leap and pull the parachute later. You'll figure it out. So I think those are the big things that it takes to become the man that your kids need you to be. A lot of it is just examining yourself, and you know what your flaws are. Do you spend too much time on your phone? Do you spend too much time watching TVs, too much time playing video games? Like you are a person now, and just write down the things that you suck at. That's not that hard. Like it's just write down the few things that you know you do bad in a day. Or I've heard some people say like write down what you do in a day, and then you'll realize what you do bad. I think most people, you could sit here right now and take 5 minutes and go, yeah, I suck at this, I suck at that. You're probably thinking it now, like I could probably do that better. I could definitely do that better. I could get up a little bit early. I could go work out, all that stuff. That's fine. But like just examine your life, because like Socrates says, the unexamined life is not worth living. Wow. That was really aggressive. I feel like this is we need to go into something a little bit more light now. I never am like a happy camper, and we're not. I'm trying to teach you how to save money, and then I'm talking about like sacrifice and stuff. Like what's going on? All right, so at this section, typically this is the comment section. This is where I would like to read the comments that people leave and answer questions and whatever it may be. But this is recorded before I posted any of them, so I don't have any comments to react to. In the future, please comment any questions you might have. I would definitely want to read them. If you have any comments on the show, any questions, anything you'd like me to cover, anything you'd like me to talk about, just let me know, and I would be happy to cover it. Send me an email or a comment or whatever it may be. It's I look forward. I always enjoy. I love getting some people have emailed me on my YouTube channel from my YouTube channel, and like reading what they say. Some of the stuff is like, first of all, they like give me more credit than I deserve, but a lot of it is just like so remarkable and so cool to hear people like actually making their like, yeah, I started watching your videos for this, and I started doing this, I started running, I started working out, and like I lost some weight. It's like the coolest thing ever. So if you have any comments, just let me know. And now we're going to finish up with the weekly unsolicited advice. So in this section, I get to just tell you what I think you should do better in your life, even if you already do that well, because this is unsolicited advice. This is the type of conversation you have with your aunt at the kitchen table on Thanksgiving. She tells you what she thinks you should be doing. That's what this is right now. I'm not saying I'm a Karen technically, but I'm giving off some Karen vibes. That's what the weekly unsolicited advice section is all about, where I can say whatever I want because it's my show. And in today's weekly unsolicited advice, you have too much stuff. You own too many things. What? What are you talking about? How do you know how many things I own? I don't know, but I know you own too much of it. And this is, I've talked about this in the past, that I'm a minimalist, and I'm not gonna lie, like I have fallen off the wagon a little bit on my minimalism. It's tougher with kids than I thought it would be. I thought it'd be kind of easy. It's like, just give them 5 toys. No, people are always buying your kids toys, and it's hard to tell them like, no, we don't really want that. It's okay though. You just like throw it out later. That's what we do. And or another thing, leave it in the original packaging and then just gift it to somebody at a later date. That's what we do. So I think you have too much stuff. I think everybody has too much stuff. Too many cars, too many this, too many that, whatever it may be. I don't really care. Too many gizmos and gadgets. I think that too much stuff burdens your life in a way that you can't comprehend until you start to break it down and you start to follow the trend of what this stuff means. For example, you have a lot of stuff Stuff costs money. That money is something you put onto a credit card. That credit card is a bill you have to pay every single month. So now you're not working for yourself. You're working for the lender. A man is always slave to the lender. A borrower is always slave to the lender. That's the quote. And so that stress carries over into your day-to-day life. So in your day-to-day life, you get stressed out about the money and your job and whatever it may be. And you have all this stuff lying around the house that you don't want to clean because you're stressed out. So not only is the stress from buying all this stuff stressing you out, but it's also stressing yourself out even more because it's all over the place and you don't want to clean it up. And you're constantly kicking into things and running over things. And all that stress just adds up. You start to follow the thread of stuff and you begin to realize that these things are making your life miserable. And that's a hard realization to have because stuff is cool. A new computer is fun. A new phone is cool. A new camera. Like, I love gizmos and I love gadgets. A new car. I've never actually bought a new car, but a used new car is still a new used car is still really cool. This stuff is like when you actually start to look at the things that you have in your life, you realize, first of all, you only use a handful of it. And second of all, you realize that it can actually cause you a great deal of hardship and pain. I'm not suggesting that you need to get rid of every single t-shirt you have and just buy one color t-shirt. Like you just have to buy one red t-shirt and you have 15 of them and you have 15 pairs of the same pants, underwear, socks. I'm not suggesting that at all. What I am suggesting is actually taking the time this weekend, next weekend, the next couple weeks to just start to go through your stuff. There's probably a considerable amount of value there. There's probably thousands of dollars of value there for one. Help you pay off a credit card or help you invest. Don't forget to invest your money into, I can't say this is not financial advice, but just buy something that follows the market. It's pretty obvious, pretty easy. And so when you sell all that stuff, invest the money, you lighten the burden on your life, and then make sure that in the future, you don't repeat that same mistake because it's an easy thing to do. I am very critical on the amount of things that my wife and I have. A lot of that is just the toys that our kids have. But it's like, life creeps up on you fast. And if you're not taking care of your purchases and keeping an eye on just how many things you're actually buying, you would be surprised at just how much stuff you start to accumulate in your day-to-day life and how much stuff you don't use. You'll have a whole garage full of crap that you could throw it all out and you wouldn't even notice. So take the time this weekend, next weekend, whatever it may be, to clean your stuff out, throw it away, donate it, sell it, whatever you have to do to get rid of it. Personally, I like to donate it because it gets out of there a lot faster unless it's worth like over $100. Then, because a lot of that stuff that's worth under $100 is going to be really hard to sell. But if I know I can sell it pretty quick and it's worth like over $100, then I will try to sell it. If not, I'll probably just donate it and they can take off my hands and somebody else can use it that would actually use it. Hopefully that would actually use it. And so that's my weekly unsolicited advice. I think you have too much crap. So get rid of some of your crap and you can come thank me later. So thank you guys so much for watching and listening. This is episode 2 of the Dear Young Men podcast. I'm really enjoying this. I'm really enjoying the monologues. This is my favorite part. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.